Welcome to The Creative Influencer, where we discuss all things creative with an emphasis on influencers. The Creative Influencer is hosted by John Pfeiffer. John is an entertainment attorney in Santa Monica, California, who represents influencers and other creatives.
This is episode 2 of the second season of the Creative Influencer podcast. Today we interview Adam Krasner. Adam has had a very interesting career. He started in the mailroom at William Morris in Denver. While at William Morris, he worked with clients including Donald Trump. After spending time in the advertising world, Adam became a talent manager at Fullscreen Media, specializing in representing digital creators. Adam is now a partner at 2 West Entertainment, where he represents some really truly dynamic talents in the digital space. This was a fun interview, so stay tuned for a great conversation. I am joined today by Adam Krasner. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to go to your background first. Where are you from originally?
I am from New York.
And you now live?
I live in West Hollywood, but I feel a bit nomadic these days. So say I'm based in Los Angeles today, but tomorrow might be somewhere else.
Now I got to ask you, LA versus New York, which you like better?
This is an ongoing debate that I have, and I don't necessarily think I have the answer that you want to hear.
I don't know that you know the answer I want to hear.
No, I think that New York and LA are by far the 2 best cities in this country, if not, 2 of the greatest in the world, and they both have their pros and cons.
Okay, so Jets or Giants?
Giants.
Mets or Yankees?
Yankees.
Okay.
The teams that are good.
to the current work situation. You recently formed 2 West Entertainment. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So 2 West Entertainment was formed in October of 2018. So about, crazy to say this, but I guess like 5 months now. Feels like it's either been forever or was yesterday. But it was definitely a long time coming. I had, at the time that it was formed, I had been working in talent management for 3 years at 2 other companies, split amongst those 3 years, and sort of just got to a period of time where I realized that the best way that I could represent my clients was doing it independently of a larger company.
When you started your career, did you have a master plan? I mean, A to B, B to C, C to D?
No, I think that when I look back, I'm very proud of the sort of the resume that I have built up for myself, and it looks like there was this grand master plan, but I would be lying if I said that my general plan was having 0 plan at all, other than trying to find something that I genuinely enjoyed and was excited to wake up to do every day, which I know is a luxury, but that was my goal, and I believe I finally was able to achieve this.
Growing up, what did you want to do?
I really was not sure what I wanted to do. I think that like many children that grew up in big cities with parents that were professionals, I was just pushed to experience a lot of different things and really focus on my education. So I was never really focused on the result as much as I was focused on the process. And I think I had the confidence that it would just all sort of work out, which again sounds like a nice privilege to have, but and it hasn't been an easy road, but
it's working out.
It is working out.
And you mentioned education. Where did you go to college?
I went to the University of Michigan for
now,
undergrad.
Being a New Yorker, how did you pick Michigan?
I went to a small private school for 13 years of my life, and I wanted to leave the Northeast. I wanted to go to a big school that had school spirit, that had great sports teams, because I love college sports and I love sports, and I wanted to go somewhere that I could also, meet a diverse group of people from all over the country and not be in an environment where I was in a class where everybody knew everyone and everybody knew each other's business.
Was Michigan, did it turn out to be that way for you?
Yes. I've never heard of anyone who went to the University of Michigan who does not have glowing things to say about it. I would say that is like one of the themes that I've heard from anyone who has ever spoken to or dated or been involved with anyone who went to Michigan. So
there's a guy in the office from Ohio State, and he doesn't have the same view.
Yeah, I bet. But I would say people from Michigan don't have such great views
of Ohio State.
But, we'll let the academic reputation speak for itself.
And then after Michigan, did you have more school?
I did. Right after, and I think this goes back to the question that you asked, I really was not sure what I wanted to do, but I knew that I was good at school, and I enjoyed school, and I enjoyed reading, and I enjoyed writing. I was an English major in college, which is, has the great reputation for being the most useless major with direct application to a job, which is true. But it does teach you how to think, and I think in that sense, I figured law school seemed like a great opportunity for me. And so my senior year of college, I took the LSATs and I applied to law school, and I was fortunate enough to get a great scholarship to go to Cardozo, which is based in downtown New York City.
Did you take the bar afterwards? Are you licensed?
I am. I'm a licensed attorney in the great state of New York.
Hence the back and forth between New York and LA.
Yes, and I do not have any plans to study or take the bar in California because I have barely enough time to shop for groceries.
Did you go to work for a law firm when you graduated?
I did not. I spent my summers in law school really focusing on the public sector and figuring out ways that I could sort of use my newfound education to, contribute, because I sort of figured that once I graduated, I would probably be more focused on the business side of things. But, as I learned, I really enjoyed doing that, but I also wanted to be more entrepreneurial than that. And I've always had a really, really deep interest for the entertainment business, and I started sort of just networking and figuring out who I knew and what entertainment opportunities were available for people in New York, because obviously the entertainment business is based in Los Angeles. And at that time in my life, I couldn't have imagined my life existing anywhere outside of the bubble of Manhattan, which in retrospect is a little sad, but made sense back then.
But the whole New Yorker cartoon makes sense.
The whole New Yorker cartoon makes sense. And so I would say that at that time period, it was right around when the show Entourage was on TV, and I think it was introducing the business side of the entertainment industry to a larger group of people. And I definitely did not aspire to be, have the, personality per se of some of the agents that were depicted in Entourage, but it definitely opened up a world to me in which I could be on the business side of the entertainment industry, and it felt very entrepreneurial. And it also happened that a lot of agents and managers were lawyers, so it seemed like a cool application. And so probably at my my final semester in law school, I started networking. Found some connections that I had personally to both WME and CAA, and I interviewed at both to start in the mailroom. And this was during the time in which I was taking the bar exam. And the day after I finished the bar exam, I received a phone call from the head of HR at WME in New York offering me a job to start in the mailroom. And this was my dream job, to push a mail cart and make $10 an hour. So I said yes immediately. And I had already had a little post bar trip planned with a couple friends from law school. And so I was able to sort of pick my start date. I want to say I started, the first week of October. And this was back in 2011. So that was in New York.
And I know back in the day, before emails and before you could just have deliveries, if you worked in the mailroom, you actually delivered stuff. What do you do in the mailroom when you started?
A lot of gossip. It's really learning the entertainment business through osmosis, all the way down to the granular part of knowing where every agent sits and the names of different agents all over and what departments they were in. But yes, we literally sorted mail and made photocopies and delivered packages all over town. I mean, now that she's passed away, I feel more comfortable talking about it. I, delivered something to Aretha Franklin one time at the Trump International Hotel. I think it's the Trump International right in Columbus Circle. So you do get to have some funny encounters. I've been in hotel rooms with movie stars where they're in their robes and I'm delivering a script to them in person. So yeah, all the stories are true. And even with electronic communication, books like The Mailroom very much hold up.
And the book you're referring to is all the executives that started in the mailroom and have now risen to power.
Yes, and I think that's a really good book to mention because it's, first of all, such an easy read and was definitely the inspiration / solidified my decision to want to start from the bottom up in the entertainment industry. And also really reading it is inspiring because it makes you realize that all these amazing executives that are, CEOs, that are heads of studios, that are, leading talent agencies, et cetera, all started in the exact same place. And I think that there's this sort of shared camaraderie that exists between the men and women that experience this, where there's just a mutual respect for the hard work and really the aspect of nothing being, no task being too menial for someone to do.
At some point you left the mailroom.
Yes.
You were still at William Morris.
I was.
What did you do next?
I started working in the non-scripted television department, which I very quickly identified as the area of interest that I had. The talent agencies are all based in Los Angeles, and they all have different size offices. I would say WME and CAA have the most significant offices in New York, size-wise. But there are some businesses that are really just based and only based in Los Angeles. So when you work in a talent agency in New York, it's not necessarily a satellite office, but you don't get exposure to the film side of the business as much as the, actors, actresses, talent side of the business. So really the largest two, probably the two largest areas, that the talent agencies focus on in New York, just based on, where the buyers are, their books department and their non-scripted television, because there are a lot of TV networks based in New York, especially on the talk show side, reality TV, hosting, etc., and obviously news.
And then one of the clients that WME had on the non-scripted side was
our president, Donald J. Trump. Is it Jay?
I don't know.
I think I just made that up. It sounded great, but I guess I'm a bad American for it.
I do not know.
Well, anyway, yes, he was one of WME's former clients, and I believe that WME finally ended their relationship with him when he started making inflammatory comments about Mexicans during the beginning of his campaign for president in 2016.
Now, when you were there, were there regular meetings scheduled with him?
There were typically, I would say with him, nothing maybe is regular, but as regular as it could be. We, WME represented him mostly in a production capacity because obviously for, 10 plus years prior to that, he was a very successful non-scripted television on-camera personality and producer. Trump Productions was one of the producers of The Apprentice, I believe.
When I went back, I did a search. In September 1990, there was a show called The Trump Card. It was a game show filmed at the Trump Castle in Atlantic City. And on the opening episode, he made a cameo to come out.
Interesting. So he's obviously always had a lot of interest in being on camera and being in the spotlight, which we all know. But I think with a particular interest in non-scripted television or pseudo-scripted, because I feel like they should get more airtime. But there are some really funny moments of him doing professional wrestling, like WWE wrestling with like Vince McMahon. I don't have you seen any of this stuff? I'm sure he didn't let himself get hit by a chair, but I want to think that he probably hit someone over the head with a folding chair. This was like in the 90s. This is not even such a long time ago.
Right.
But yeah, so we really worked with him in like a support capacity, because I think in my mind, in retrospect, most of everything he does is fueled by ego. So I think it was a relationship-based, relationship, like everything really is in this business, and really just helping him and his team develop, new ideas for television. Since, I think at least at the time they owned the Miss America, property, etc. So there are obviously ways to exploit that IP.
And there was a time when you had a face-to-face with him.
Yes, I have.
Can you tell me just the layout of this meeting?
Yes, he's definitely the only American president I have met. I've heard him and our previous president, Barack Obama, speak. But yes, I had the opportunity. And again, like this is it's definitely an opportunity / experience that I had that even before he was, running for president or elected president, was always like a very memorable story, one that I would always have told. And not even just because it was him. I mean, obviously he's a name that everyone knew at the time, just because he has been, such a public figure for such a long time, especially in New York. But really it was the first meeting that my boss at the time took me to. And as someone who, yes, went to law school, but then was quickly humbled and, felt fortunate to be pushing a mail cart and making $10 an hour, which is just like also funny because that's not even minimum wage in New York anymore. And this is like only 10 years ago.
Right.
So just how quickly things have changed. But we, what was really nice about it was, my boss brought me to a meeting with one of the agency's clients and a, substantial public figure nonetheless. And it was a really empowering moment, both because, my boss wanted to expose me to something that he didn't have to, because usually assistants are just on the phone line, listening on mute. And that's really like how we learn a lot about how to interact and do business. So the fact that he was willing and felt comfortable having me meet Donald Trump and his team in person was a really great experience.
He was just the Donald.
Yeah, he was just the Donald. I mean, he and yeah. So I mean, at the time, WME's offices were in Midtown, and we walked over to Trump Tower and walked through the lobby where he had all of his knickknacks on sale, and we took the elevator up to, the Trump Organization's offices, which were, just maybe a floor or two, and exactly how they described, met his, long time assistant. And we were taken into Donald Trump's office.
Who was in there when you first walked in?
When we first walked in, it was just me, my boss, and Michael Cohen, who...
The Michael Cohen who just testified in front of Congress.
Yes, just recently testified in front of Congress. At the time, he definitely, I can confirm everything he said. He was definitely his fixer. He was a very, very loyal employee of Donald Trump, or Mr. Trump, as Michael fondly and only referred to him as. But yeah, it was, I believe, the meeting began with Michael and his colleague at the time, Larry Glick, and Donald Trump and his daughter Ivanka joined us shortly after. And it was, the conversation, et cetera, was very light. It was fun. The only things that we really spoke about were business related, which obviously, is private and not really relevant. But what I would say that I really enjoyed was, the stack of, which, there are plenty of pictures of, but, just the stack of plans for, golf courses on his desk and all the news clippings. And I would say the first 20 minutes of the meeting, like, he really just was telling us about all the golf courses he was, renovating and buying, et cetera. But, I think, like, for me, and again, like, this is why it's one of these meetings that really stood out for me. And I at least told myself repeatedly about this to try to make myself feel a little bit better during the election and post-election, because I would say that I firmly was not a supporter, nor did I vote for him. But one thing that I really appreciated, and again, like, in the context of it being someone who just was looking for their opportunity to be listened to and heard. When we were just having discussions about business and ideas were being floated around the room, more than once, Donald Trump, looked at me and asked me, what do you think? And in those moments, I felt very relevant and very heard by someone who I thought could be so easily blow me off. I mean, I've been on the phone with him before, but he, did he know that I was on the phone? Unclear. Not that it was a secret, but it was never, necessarily relevant to him. So I think being in a room and being acknowledged and recognized by someone of importance and power was definitely a really nice feeling. But he genuinely wanted to know what I thought and listened. And I, observed that he actually asked everyone in the room what their opinions were. And I think he would kind of go around. This is sort of how I synthesized it in my head afterwards. But he would go around and ask everyone their opinion on something. And he would make up his mind and he'd move on to the next thing. And I think in that moment, at least, I admired that, as I was like, that might be a good business skill, really asking the people that you're with what their opinions are and then taking them into consideration. And so I think in those moments, I told myself, at least he listens to other people. I think in retrospect, or maybe the, caveat to asking people's opinions before you make decisions is you should probably have your own opinions as well. And also the opinions of people that you're asking are only as good as the people that you're surrounding yourself with. So I think it's a little easier when the stakes are lower, when you're talking about, golf courses or reality television versus, matters of national security. And also, the types of people that you surround yourselves with on matters of golf courses and reality television might be not as important as matters of national security. So I don't think that my hope for applying that style of management to the presidency has been as successful as maybe I was hoping it would be. But it was definitely an interesting opportunity. But I can say that, in all my interactions with him, he was nothing but respectful to me. And I at least am able to take that with me.
What about Michael Cohen?
He, I think, has been accurately depicted in the media as someone who was blindly loyal to a man of power. And I think he was, based on everything, just having interacted with him and just being an intuitive person, I can only say that everything about him is true. But I also don't think that he is being untruthful in any of his testimony. And that's just based on inference. That's not based on any firsthand knowledge of anything. But I think he's a victim of circumstance, but I also think he's a victim of his own, greed and blind ambition. And I think it's a good lesson to learn for anyone who is, aspiring to make it in the entertainment industry or otherwise. Is like, truthfully, you can cut corners to get ahead, but eventually it's going to catch up to you.
So let's shift gears. WME had a partner company.
Yes, they had many partner companies. I started working at WME at an interesting time because they had taken on a significant outside investment from a private equity firm. I believe it was private equity, Silver Lake. And they injected them with lots of cash, which meant they were able to invest in a ton of ancillary businesses. I believe CAA was sort of the first agency to do this. Now, the big three all have. UTA has significant investment as well. So they've all, taken on different investments in different areas of the entertainment industry that they're allowed to invest in, as talent agencies are. And one of those businesses is Droga 5, which is, award-winning advertising agency and, top agency in the world by, Adweek and Ad Age, probably like 5 or 6 years running at this point. And, when they acquired them, not necessarily exactly sure what the synergies would be, but one of the goals was obviously to try to find synergies between WME's vast talent roster and the brand clients that Droga 5, executed their ad campaigns for. And so that was something that, as I sort of was working for different people at the company, was becoming more and more involved with. And, as I got older and not having gone to WME right out of college, I was also noticing that, at this point, $12 an hour, because you got a $1 raise every year.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, $1 raise. So in my third year, I was making $12 an hour. Was not necessarily paying the bills in New York City, our most expensive city in our country to live in. So I sort of started realizing that the, agency life, although it was glamorous and gave lots of access, was not necessarily my best course moving forward to pay my bills, both in the short and medium term, and really give me the life that I wanted. And also, wanting to get more involved in areas of the business that I didn't necessarily want to wait any longer for. And an interesting opportunity arose with Droga 5 to work with them in sort of a hybrid capacity, where I was able to both use my law degree and my knowledge of talent and the entertainment industry, and really work across the different departments that they had servicing their, the large companies that they represented. So I went over there, and my title was a mouthful. I'm still not exactly sure what it was.
What was your title?
My title was Integrated Production Business Manager.
Which is what?
I'm still not sure, and that's why I spent only a year there. It was a really fascinating experience. I was able to basically run the business side of some of their biggest clients internally. So I worked on Under Armour, I worked on Smartwater, Diet Coke. I was involved with Google Android, but it was really a hybrid role. I think for me, the lesson that I learned is really sometimes expectations and reality don't align, but there's always something to gain from any work experience. And I think in that one, I was optimistic that I would have more of a role in sort of crafting both the strategy and especially on the talent side of things. Though I learned that when there's an entire department called strategy, it's hard to ingratiate yourself with them when you have a 4-word title that I'm still not sure what it means. But
so strategy was a little territorial.
So yeah, all of I would say for creative industry, or on the outside looking in, advertising is a very, very siloed space where really everybody sticks to their lanes, which was a total 180. And from the agency world and representation in general, which is just such an entrepreneurial job where you have to wear so many different hats, even in the same meeting with the same client. And so I think for me, I think the thing that I struggled with the most was really being put in a very, very specific box and being expected to stay in that box. And really that just never fit my personality in my entire life, but also specifically in business when I just knew that I had so much more to offer than, negotiating production agreements with production companies and licensing songs from, different record labels or publishers, or getting the rights to use, pictures of James Dean in white t-shirts for Hanes or Jockey. I believe it was Jockey, but I think that I learned a lot of different aspects of the advertising business. And again, like I also was able to work on some really cool talent campaigns. This was when Steph Curry won his first MVP, and Under Armour, he's an Under Armour athlete, and we did a huge campaign for that. So I definitely learned a lot about the different aspects of the business, but I realized that it was much more, it was obviously, talent representation is a servicing business. But it's much more proactive in that, or, I don't love the analogy, but it's, it's eat what you kill. You're only going to make money on the business that you're bringing in. Whereas, ad agency world, and again, like your clients have skin in the game. Whereas like ad agencies are representing these billion-dollar corporations that are publicly traded. You're dealing with, marketing executives at the agencies or at the brands that, frankly, like they just want to make sure that their bosses are happy. And so there's a lot more constraints, in that sort of experience, in that environment. So I'd say for me, like it really was just a bit limiting in, the entrepreneurial and collaborative aspects that I really, really enjoyed about entertainment. And I very quickly realized that I needed to get back towards representation if I, wanted to pursue a career that was really enjoyable to me.
Which ultimately led to a move to Los Angeles.
Yes. So I would say very clearly, I was almost 30 at the time. And yes, my family and many of my friends live in New York. But I very much realized that if I was going to sort of jump back into the representation business, and, I knew that I did not want to go back into, working, frankly, I just didn't really want to put a suit on every day.
You don't wear a suit every day?
I don't. My typical outfit is sneakers and some shade of black jeans and some shade of black shirt or sweatshirt. It's just comfortable. And it's also disarming when you're in meetings.
So you come to Los Angeles, you work as manager?
Yeah, I was hired. And again, like for me, I also was very cognizant of, looking at where the larger entertainment industry was headed. And, it was no surprise 10 years ago, it's no surprise today that there was definitely a trend towards, what the digital landscape meant, what it meant to be in digital media to begin with, who and where the new talent were coming from in the industry outside of, traditional actors, actresses. And like any big company, it's harder. And I always like the analogy of, looking at big companies as cruise ships and little companies as like little speedboats. You can do a lot more and have a lot more going on a cruise ship, but in order to pivot and make a sharp turn, it takes a lot longer, than, when you're in a speedboat. So I think for me, seeing that, the digital, I don't think it's digital renaissance, but I'm just lacking a better word, but really the changing tide of the industry was clearly towards the digital side of the business. And I felt like I needed to get on that side of it. And so I started as a talent manager at the digital media company Fullscreen, which is based in Los Angeles. Former colleague of mine at WME was running their talent division there. And they were involved in a handful of different businesses, one of which was talent management, with digital talent specifically based / building businesses on YouTube.
Let me interject. You talked about the digital shift. Where do you see digital in the next 3 years? Is it going to continue to have the importance?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I find to be so fascinating is the sort of, and I think it's necessary for big businesses, but sort of the delineation between digital and between non-scripted television and between film and between scripted television, because at the end of the day, they're all just different forms of content. And so I think there's a difference between, and I think this is sort of where people get lost on like the entertainment, business side of things, is that it's much more about the process of distribution than anything else. So really, and again, like obviously everyone on the business side of things have adapted to this, but linear television or Netflix, it's just the only difference is how it's distributed at the end of the day. And I think for me, learning that was really interesting. But for me, being on more the talent side of it, it was really just seeing where talent were, being discovered and how they were building their own businesses. So I think for me, when I look at the next 3 years, like any new sort of area that comes out of an existing industry, I just see the digital side of things continuing to stabilize. I sort of I like to make, predictions every year, and I have clients that I can say are just been consistently on an upward trajectory, since I've started working with them. But I think what is nice is, again, another phrase that was taught to me when I was, at WME in the mailroom and as an assistant and being stressed about getting promoted and all these things. I was always given the advice that the cream always rises to the top, and, meaning that the best people, the best talent eventually always get recognized.
And do you think that's true for YouTubers?
I do in the long term. I think that there's a difference between, going viral and getting an audience because you're shocking individuals and having an audience because you're creating content that is high quality over a long-term period of time. So I think for me, the way that I look at the next 3 years is just a continual stabilization of the digital sphere in the best possible way. I think also a lot of, to remind everyone, a lot of, YouTube's been around now for more than 10 years. They talk about some of the original YouTubers as like YouTube OGs. But the truth is like those people didn't have access to representation in the ways that they do now. They didn't have access to, high-speed internet the way that we do, and having all the variety of platforms. And
nobody thought it was a career.
No, I mean, at the time, YouTube was the only platform available to really self-create and publish content. And now, I mean, I know the surveys say, the number one job that elementary students want now is to be a YouTuber. I don't know what it was when I was a kid, but it was probably like astronaut or fireman. I don't know.
For me, it was football player.
Football player. Okay, fine. Yeah.
It wasn't a YouTuber.
All right, see, that's why I'm just yeah. So either way, it's definitely shifted. But I think what we'll see now, because a lot of digital talent are just by definition younger, I think you're going to see them grow up and the industry grow up with them. And I think as they, become even, more comfortable in their own skin and, really grow into themselves as adults, I think you're going to see, their businesses mature along with them. And I think that's sort of the general trajectory that the, quote, digital space is taking. But for me, my approach and the reason that I've been drawn into the digital side of things, was very much informed by my time at WME, working with, in the non-scripted department, working with, hosts and experts in different areas. And for me, those hosts, became popular or, experts, by, on the Food Network, having the Food Network discover, great on-camera chef talent, and entire multi-dimensional businesses have been built around Rachel Ray and Giada De Laurentiis and Bobby Flay, et cetera. And really, at the time, these were restaurateurs or, hosts. Like Rachel was a host on, local cable access in New Jersey, I believe. And really, they just came out at a time where they didn't have the ability to self-distribute the content that they, maybe always wanted to create themselves. And so like the way that I approach my clients' businesses is really in that same vein, is that these are just individuals that if they came out 20 years ago, they just would have had to rely on the more traditional media outlets to sort of snatch them up.
So the perfect transition to talking about your clients.
Yes, I love talking about my clients. They're all my favorite clients.
That's right. So let's first start with Karina Garcia.
Yes.
How would you describe Karina and what she does?
It is a fascinating question because depending on who I'm talking to, it's they either have no idea what it is. If it's a child, they might be speechless. And if it's a parent, they may or may not hate me. But,
or they might be speechless.
Yes, or they might be speechless. But no, so Karina Garcia is a wonderful, wonderful human being. She is 25 years old. She grew up, she's a first generation Mexican American. She grew up in the Inland Empire, just outside Los Angeles. And when she was about, when she was 22 years old, and she had been taking some, college courses and, had some side jobs. Her twin sister was establishing herself as a beauty YouTuber. And Karina was really into crafting. And she decided to, if my sister could do it, why don't I just give it a try? And she decided to upload her first YouTube video. And this was about 4 years ago. And she did it from her family's mobile home that she was living in at the time. And she's one of 6 children. And she, stuck with it. It was obviously just a side hobby and something that she was just enjoying and having fun with. No expectation of turning it into a career. But she was really into crafting and DIY. And, about 6 months into her, putting out videos, she was growing, a small audience, 1,000 people every week or something. Maybe were starting to subscribe. And she found a recipe on, Pinterest or one of these websites to create, what we remember as, what we as in like millennials might remember from watching Nickelodeon in the 90s is like gack, which is basically just like a slime that you could play with. Kind of like a gooey substance that was, colorful and, definitely parents didn't love. But Karina figured out found a really basic recipe to create it with household ingredients. And she made a video about it and she had so much fun with it. And it sort of just ballooned from there. It became really, really popular really quickly. Fast forward a few years now, she has almost 9 million subscribers on YouTube and has other platforms, etc. People thought slime would be a trend like fidget spinners. It's not a trend. It's a new product category. And
slime is here to stay.
Slime is here to stay. Her title is the Queen of Slime. And she has now traveled all over the world making appearances, building businesses, and she's like a really great example of how someone who just uploads a video on a whim as a young adult can go from, casual participant in, self-distribution of content to really having a multi-faceted empire.
So let's go from slime to astrology.
Yes.
Aliza Kelly. Tell me about Aliza.
Yeah. Just like Karina in the sense of, really being a self-starter. Aliza is a, fascinating individual who always was interested in the occult and astrology as a child. And it was something that she sort of had as a hobby. After college, she tried to figure out a way to sort of meld her love for that and her love for creating businesses. And she actually created an astrology-based dating app, which if she had probably started now would be wildly, wildly popular. But she was probably just a few years too early on the trend. But she decided to commit herself to being an astrologer full time, which could mean a lot of different things, but for her, it's, she was the astrologer for Allure magazine, which is part of Hearst, and she authored a book called The Mixology of Astrology, which was a, just like it sounds, it's a cocktail book with cocktails that are recommended for everyone.
Has she read your horoscope?
She has read my full birth chart. I have.
What drink are you?
I don't remember off the top of my head what drink I am, but I'm also, I like to say I'm equal opportunity when it comes to a good or a well-mixed cocktail. So, I have a feeling I would probably enjoy many of the cocktails in her book. But I have learned a lot about astrology. I think what's fascinating about it and why I love working with Eliza and building her business. And now she's an astrologer for Cosmo, or Cosmopolitan magazine. They actually have now a 10-page astrology section. She has a, video series with them, and that's distributed on YouTube and Amazon Prime, where she reads the star chart of their cover star every month. We're building out her business in, courses, in product categories. She has a new book coming out in just a few months that is going to be for young adults, which is almost like an astrology workbook to really guide them through understanding where they are in this. And that and really, because I think a lot of people associate astrology or their horoscope with romance or financial success. And I think for her, and what I'd really love about how she approaches it is, and this is one of the first things she ever said to me, is astrology is a practice in empathy. And for her, what that means is really it's a great entry point into people being a little bit more self-aware and reflecting on what it is about them that maybe might be their core attributes, but also ways in which maybe they are straying from their values because of, many things that may have happened in their past or are currently happening. So I think for her, it's almost a, more accessible, less taboo version of, therapy.
So let's go from slime to astrology to tech.
Yes. And I think this is just another great example of how varied the digital space is as it comes to talent that have built their own businesses. I think that, one of my clients who I work very, very closely with, though she is based in New York, her name's Sarah Dici.
Rhymes with peachy.
And I think, again, like another fascinating story about someone who, started on the internet, though I don't necessarily recommend people to drop out of college. Sarah was an engineering major in school, and she was obviously one woman in a very male-dominated field. She saw her debt mounting, and she really wanted to be a content creator. She was very passionate about technology, and she saw a really cool opportunity that Adobe put out, which was called the Adobe Creator Program, I believe. And she applied on a whim. She had, maybe 200 YouTube subscribers at the time. And she just wrote out, I want to be a content creator. This is what I sort of envisioned. This is what I would do. And it's essentially like a 1-year grant where she was paid a very, very good salary for a 21-year-old to receive. And she was able to spend an entire year just focusing on her creativity and building out an audience, because that was sort of what she had pitched Adobe as her passion. And again, like Adobe was really just trying to empower a new generation of creatives that use their technology and different applications.
And it's clearly worked for her.
And it really did. It's incredible. I mean, especially that this was, one of the first people that they enlisted. Clearly, whoever was reading the applications had a great eye for talent, because she very quickly became, she very quickly built a very sizable audience on YouTube and Instagram and Twitter. And she caught my eye very early on YouTube. She was very hesitant to talk to a manager because she was receiving a salary already. She was very hesitant to monetize her overall business, but, very sweetly and realistically said, why don't we reconnect once I am done with the, my 1-year grant with Adobe. And so we kept in touch. We met in New York, which is where she's based. And I really just gave her my sort of top-down vision for both her business and where I sort of see talent situated in the digital space, specifically content creators like herself. And we started working together, and this was nearly 3 years ago now. And since then, she's built an incredibly diverse business for herself. I mean, she works with a ton of, top-tier companies, helping them promote their products. She has worked with Shell. She has worked with Intel, Dell, Apple, Sony, Canon. The list goes on. She also has built an incredible audience with a podcast. She has really, she has a merchandise business. So really, I think it's an example of how you can start on one platform where you're just creating content for fun, for your fans, and really expand from there.
Into a real business.
Into a real business that very much pays the bills and then some.
And then we'll end talking about your clients with, she self-describes herself as the Walmart greeter of sex and relationships.
Yes, that is very much how she self-describes herself. And, again, Shannon is a great, great story of
What's her full name?
Her name is Shannon Boudram. She is from Toronto originally and moved to Los Angeles about 4 years ago. But again, just a great story of how, if you believe in yourself, like all of my clients have, you don't have to wait for other people to make these opportunities for you. She, she went to school for journalism. She got, she actually released a book about over 10 years ago that she edited called Laid. And she really wanted to be an on-camera host or, personality, which, again, Toronto is actually a huge city, the largest in Canada, and is the center of their entertainment industry. But obviously the options from a television perspective are limited. And she was recognized by some executives at Viacom on MTV and BET's side. And she ended up being cast in a few pilots that didn't end up getting picked up. But that very much made her realize, I don't want to wait around and for other people to cast me in their projects when I already have plenty of ideas and I can create it myself. And so that sort of lit a fire for her to go on YouTube and just started creating videos. And she built a sizable audience, being, just like you said, the Walmart greeter of sex, and really giving people advice in a very accessible yet fun way. And
one example of that is she said that love is an addiction just like food, and you should avoid junk food relationships, which I disagree with.
I wish she gave me that advice, 10 years ago, but I'm very lucky to have her in my life now. I would say, and I do love all my clients, but I am fortunate to have clients that are experts in very useful areas, because, I might be lost without Sarah's advice for me on my next tech purchases. And she's very instrumental in the new lens I got for my camera, which I'm very excited about.
So the side benefit.
Yeah. So there are side benefits here. But I think what's amazing about Shannon, again, is just the ability for someone to be a self-starter, not to wait for things to happen for themselves. And, moving to Los Angeles, her and I working together for, the past 3 years. She has an amazing book coming out this summer called The Game of Desire, which is almost like the female response to the book The Game, which is a very popular book for men about, relationships and, interacting with the opposite sex. And, she has, she had a series on Facebook Watch, which again, just like Netflix, is just a, just another platform that, but she's done that. We have other projects in the works. She does a very substantial lecture business where she goes all over the country talking about all things sex, female empowerment. But I say the through line is, you can build really interesting, diverse, multifaceted businesses around individuals that are experts in certain fields. And so for me, the through line, I mainly represent women that I believe are making a difference in the lives of the audience that follows them. And, it might seem silly at first glance to think that, Karina, playing with slime on YouTube is making a difference, but she really is, because her story alone is so inspiring to so many, children, and especially the, Mexican-American community, not having as many sort of role models to look up to. But additionally, what I love about what Karina does is, in an age where I can't stand walking into restaurants and seeing parents put an iPad in front of their kids so they don't have to talk for the next hour and a half while the adults talk, is
and drink
is that she creates content that actually forces children to create things with their hands and move away from the screen. And I think in that sense, I'm always going, with Karina has a big touring business. And whenever I'm, at any of her events, I always make a point to speak to the moms and dads that come with their children. And they're always saying, like, I love Karina because she's someone who is safe that I can sit my children down with, but also it forces them to, create things and not just sit in front of their computer or, on their iPhone or iPad all day.
Which is a great way to end this. How can people find you on the internet?
They can find me on the internet by going to my business's website, 2westentertainment.com.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
That's it for this time. If you enjoyed our podcast, please write a review on iTunes and tell your friends to subscribe. If you have any questions about influencers or suggestions for future episodes, email them to John at Pfeiffer@pfeifferlaw.com. Thank you for listening.